Hello, everyone, from the Matt Morris Digital Studio here in Fresno. This is the Beem and Dean Show. This is episode 50.
Wow.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, we made it to 50.
Do you know what metal represents the number 50?
Platinum?
Close. Gold.
Gold. Okay. I should know
So
that.
happy golden anniversary to my man, the sports director from KC24 and CBS47, Scott Bemis. I'm Dean Shiro. Episode 50. How was the weekend? We had the big Fresno State win over Southern. The human jukebox was present and felt.
Yeah, that was fun. There was some fun energy in the stadium because of the Southern band. That was a lot of fun. It was a good weekend. You know, a lot of work for me. Worked Friday night high school football, Saturday night the Bulldog game.
Yeah.
If you can consider that work,
It's work.
I'm fortunate.
It's work though.
To get paid to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But was there late, press conference doesn't end until probably 11 p.m. and then we're taping some stuff on the field after that.
Nice.
You get back at 12:30 at night and then roll right into Sunday with Bulldog Insider.
Right.
And, that's a full day preparing for that show, but a good show and a good weekend.
Yeah, you and Angie did a great job on the pregame show on CBS47. Really, really good. Game went well. What are your thoughts on the game? And you just got back from the press conference too. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, didn't go to the press conference in person, but did watch it and listen to it. And it just was expected, right, Dean? I mean, it's hard to read too much into a win over a team like Southern, who's an FCS team and who plays out of the SWAC. Although, Southern was picked to win their division preseason in the SWAC.
Okay.
They're off to a bit of a rough start for themselves, so they're going to have to figure some things out. But, it's a good sign. It's a good sign whenever you can dominate teams, right? We've seen Fresno State's struggle with some FCS teams in the past.
Right.
I think this FCS squad was a little bit lower level than maybe some that they've played in the past, even like Sac State last year or Eastern Washington the previous year.
Okay.
It's not like they're playing North Dakota State here, right, in the FCS ranks. But they went out. They did what they had to do, right? They physically dominated, and the game was never in doubt.
Yeah, good to see E.J. Warner get on the board, not with 1, 2. Was it 4 passing touchdowns? Did he have?
4 passing touchdowns.
There you go.
And one great thing about games like this, Dean, obviously, is so many guys get to play, right? And so there's just this general feeling, throughout the entire locker room. Hey, you win a big game, obviously everybody's happy, but when you contribute to a win, right? Like up and down the roster. Matt N said over 80 guys played. 4 players scored their first ever touchdowns at Fresno State. It's just going to permeate through that locker room, and everybody's going to be feeling good about things, right? Headed into this week of practice and the start of Mountain West play.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to talk about there. We had a really exciting weekend of pro and college football, which we're going to recap. But we are going to start with coming on in hot. All right, Scotty, we're going to start with your topic first. We have 2 topics today. We're going to go to the pro ranks really quick. For those of you that did not see the end of the Colts-Broncos game, Scott's going to recap it for us and go into referees impacting games. So go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, for those of you who did not see the ending to the Colts-Broncos game, it was a tight game in the fourth quarter. The Broncos had several opportunities to win the game. So I don't want to put it all on the officials for why they let this one slip away. But basically, they had a 1-point lead in the final seconds. Indianapolis ran the ball 3 times and settled for like a 59-yard field goal, right? Which little dicey coaching already there, right? So they settled for the 59-yard field goal.
If you don't have Brandon Aubrey as your kicker, right?
Right. Even if you do have Brandon Aubrey as your kicker, right? They had a timeout left, right, at the end. Throw the ball at least once there on those final 3 plays. But I'm getting sidetracked here with another rant as I'm about to get into my own rant on the officials here. So what happened was 59-yard field goal to win the game for the Colts. Misses wide right. Okay. Looks like the Broncos win the game. Nope. Flag on the field, right? What do they rule? They rule some kind of 15-yard penalty for the defender who was over the center trying to use the center, the snapper on the kick, as leverage. I guess he put his hands on top of him.
Okay.
And he did put his hands on top of him. So you're not allowed to use the center, the snapper, on a field goal kick if you're the defender as leverage by putting yourself on him and leaping over him. I think it's like a safety thing. And so he did put his hands on the center.
Okay.
But it didn't impact the play whatsoever, Dean. Like, it wasn't like the guy launched up. He was on there for a second.
Of the ball or anything.
Yeah, it didn't affect the kick,
Okay.
in my opinion, in any way. The snap was fine, right? It's just have a little feel as an official in that moment. Even if the letter of the law says this should be a penalty, right? There should be a holding call on almost every single play in professional football if you went back and looked at the film. But if it happens 10 yards away from the play or 5 yards behind and it's not impacting the play anyway, I don't want an official to throw that flag because I don't want the NFL to be about flags, right? This call determined the outcome of a football game. And just have some nuance as an official, right? Like, I get it. I mean, part of being an official is knowing when to throw your flag and when not to. This was a case the flag didn't need to be thrown. It wasn't an egregious breaking of the rule. There was even maybe, I'd have to look at it again, but I'll be interested to see long-term what people say about this call. I didn't hear any post-game afterwards, from Sean Payton. I was curious to see what he would say on it. They get fined if they criticize the officials, so he might not say that much.
That might be part of it, too.
But just a message to officials, just like you don't have to pull the flag on every single play if you see a violation, if it doesn't impact the play in any way.
Yeah.
That's my message to NFL officials.
Okay. Yeah, it's a tough loss for the Broncos, and now the Colts start 2-0.
Yeah, so they re-kick, and then he makes the game-winning field goal.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, very unfortunate there. So, yeah, all right, I'm going to get into mine really quick. So, over the weekend, we had 2 firings already in college football. We had UCLA firing former UCLA running back Deshaun Foster, then head coach, and Brent Pry got fired from Virginia Tech. Both got off to really, really bad starts. I want to kind of go over the UCLA thing because I have a problem with schools, universities, hiring coaches that aren't qualified for the position that might look appealing visually, but behind the scenes just don't have any merit whatsoever. Deshaun Foster was never a coordinator. He was just a running backs coach for all these years. Yes, he's been in rooms and stuff, but I just don't understand where UCLA was going with this after Chip Kelly left to go to the NFL. Or he went to Ohio State, didn't he? NFL, then Ohio State, I'm trying to remember. But Chip Kelly left. Deshaun Foster comes in. We had a very similar situation at Colorado where we hired John Embry as our head coach. He never had any head coaching experience. He was a tight ends coach in the NFL for years. Fell flat on his face as well in the early 2010s. So what are your thoughts on Deshaun Foster, UCLA, and in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not working there. Deshaun Foster, a great UCLA running back in the day. I think sometimes teams and programs get a little too caught up in hiring one of their own, meaning like a UCLA alum, even Fresno State occasionally, maybe can get a little too caught up in that, as far as hiring a bulldog, right? And keeping it in the family. I know USC, has kind of struggled with that occasionally too at different times. Yeah, it just feels like he lost the locker room somehow here. I mean, I didn't get a chance to see much of the UCLA New Mexico game.
There wasn't much to see.
Yeah, but looking at that score, I was a little shocked. I came back from covering high school football, and I looked at that score, and I wasn't shocked to see that New Mexico had beaten UCLA because I know UCLA was struggling, and there was kind of interesting times there in Westwood. But I was shocked to see that score.
They laid it on, Scott, at the end. They were scoring touchdowns in garbage time. They were talking smack. It was bad. It was really, really bad. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is that makes a good head coach, especially at the college level. But what I have come to realize is that so much of it is about just kind of the tone you set and the culture you create, and it's less about maybe the individual play calls or even clock management. That's a big deal, but like it's more about the overall tone and culture that you set for a program. Because honestly, Dean, most programs, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, they're calling pretty much the entire game. There are some occasions where a head coach is, one of those coordinators who has a big impact on that side of the ball.
Right.
But honestly, they're just making the big picture decisions during a game, right? Usually whether to go for it on fourth down, when to use a timeout, right? And you're just kind of setting the tone. Of course, they're in charge of those two coordinators.
Right.
Their input can be heard, and they got to make sure, that they're managing everything well.
Right.
But there's so much that goes into being a head coach that I think it's got to the point where you got to have the respect of the players in the locker room. And I don't know what the situation was at UCLA.
Well, yeah, none of us do.
Deshaun Foster, may land on his feet. He may turn out to be a good football coach. I mean, just to get to a position like that, you have to be an impressive individual.
Yeah.
So give Deshaun credit for that. But it wasn't working. And when a school makes a decision like this, early in the season, it's a clear sign that something's amiss, something's wrong. Maybe they're hearing from players or, like behind the scenes,
Sure.
something's going wrong. Of course, they were involved in that whole Nico, Ima Malieva stuff during the offseason, which was kind of a mess to begin with.
Sure.
Him leaving Tennessee, over that dispute over NIL money, coming to UCLA, and then it was basically like a trade for quarterbacks.
Right.
With the UCLA quarterback, Joey Aguilar, going to
which
Tennessee.
we'll talk about in a minute.
But, I feel bad in a way. Even though he's getting an opportunity, I kind of feel bad for Tim Skipper and Jethro Franklin, who's on that staff as well, right? Former Fresno State assistant coaches. Obviously, Tim Skipper was the interim head coach for the Bulldogs.
Now Tim Skipper is the interim head coach at UCLA.
Tim Skipper, amazingly, is the interim head coach here now, however many months later, right, as the head coach at UCLA. But, I mean, I wish Skip the best, right? I want him to hopefully be able to get a few wins here, right? Kind of get things headed in the right direction, because I'm rooting for Tim Skipper. He's an easy guy to root for, and he deserves an opportunity to be a head coach again at some point, right? But this situation here, this might be a rough situation to walk into. Yeah.
It's dire. I mean, they've got Northwestern, then after that, they probably will lose all their games. If they don't, it's an upset. Let's just talk about UCLA in general really quick. A very prominent school, had a really, really successful time in the Pac-12. I kind of felt like they got dragged along with USC on that, kind of kicking and screaming. Bill Walton, the late Bill Walton, was very adamant that he wanted to stay in the Pac-12. UCLA had a very, very good track record in all their other sports in the Pac-12. Now they're in the Big Ten, and like I said, they've got it. Not just in football too, but basketball, women's basketball. It's a huge challenge, and all the travel and everything. So, what are your thoughts, really quick, on UCLA athletics in general?
Yeah, I mean, the travel is a challenge for all the minor sports, I would say, the Olympic sports, and that's not a great situation, and it never will be with teams on the West Coast being in the Big Ten. But that's just the reality of the situation. I think for a team like UCLA, what's happened here is this is a step up in competition, right? Like more than anything. I mean, I'm a Pac-12 guy. You and I are both Pac-12 guys.
Yes.
We grew up, with the Pac-10 at the time.
Yes, we did.
I'm an SC guy. Dean's, a Colorado guy.
Which we
but
got
also,
adopted in. And
yeah, you're also a USC fan.
Yes.
And, you were from the Pac-10 schools.
Yep.
So, look, I didn't think it was a good thing that the Pac-12 dissolved, obviously. But I'm a realist.
Right.
Going to the Big Ten, I mean, this is a step up for these schools. Now, I think SC, and I even think UCLA at some point, because I think things are cyclical here, will get things figured out. They'll get the right head coach in there who can get things going. And at some point in the future, UCLA, again, will be a factor, in my opinion, in the Big Ten, in football, even in football. And obviously, in basketball, they're always going to be a factor because they're in LA, Dean. They play at the Rose Bowl, a historic place, right? You should be able to recruit to UCLA. Now, the one thing I think UCLA has to do, they have to invest a little bit more in their program. And I think that Big Ten money coming in will help with that. And
we sure know ticket sales for football games aren't going to help with that.
Yeah, well, it's
like
tough.
4,000 people there at the end of that game.
That's one thing that's a little different, though. When you're in LA, and SC is not immune to this either when they're struggling. Now, they seem to have it headed in the right direction right now, but this is not West Lafayette, Indiana. This is not Happy Valley, Pennsylvania, or whatever.
There's a lot of other things to choose from.
Where that place is going to be packed on a Saturday, no matter what's going on. Columbus, Ohio, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Michigan's 4-6. It's still going to be packed there, right? And not at UCLA, not at USC. You got to win. If you don't win, people are going to find other things to do, right? There's just too much going on in LA, and it's not a college town; it's a big city, and so there is some pressure there because in order to bring people into the seats, you got to win. And I think that was ultimately probably the final nail in the coffin for Deshaun Foster, unfortunately, was that not only were things not looking good on paper. Now, keep in mind, too, that they turned it around last year at the end of the season, and some people...
didn't they win like 4 in a row?
Yeah, they were having a really rough season, and Deshaun was able to rally the guys and win some games. So it's, I remember Deshaun Foster as a running back. I don't know much about him as a head coach, but just to get to a position like this, you have to be an impressive individual. I know Tim Skipper, Jethro Franklin, had a lot of respect for him, obviously. They were willing to join him on his staff, and those are two guys that I respect tremendously.
Yeah.
But that was the final nail in the coffin, right? Was that you looked at the Rose Bowl, the pictures were circulating, they kind of became a joke. You had other conferences, commenting on how few people were at the stadium.
Right.
You had other conferences. The Pac-12, by the way, be careful there. New Pac-12 with, throwing dirt on UCLA at this point, right? Because you would take UCLA back in a second. And keep in mind, the Pac-12, if you didn't see, on Twitter, kind of retweeting some stuff out there that was making fun of UCLA and their record and everything, because the last time I looked, Oregon State and Washington State weren't having a very good weekend on Saturday.
They weren't. No, they weren't at all. Let's just go over a couple of the big games from the weekend, just a couple. One of them, my man here picked well in terms of Tennessee and the Tennessee-Georgia game. You got a W on that one. We'll go over that in a minute. But what a heck of a game, though. I mean, Tennessee comes out barnstorming. Joey Aguilar throwing, and they jumped out right away. But old Georgia, Kirby came back in the end with the running game. The power running game at the end kind of got him. But I know you got to see that game because we were texting.
That was a fun game to watch. It was very entertaining. And I mean, Neyland Stadium, on a Saturday. I mean, some of those SEC environments are just so great, right? You got Fowler and Herbstreit on the call, and the pregame pageantry and everything else, and the tee separating, and the guys running out. I mean, if you're not fired up at that point, about watching some football, you never will be. Tennessee looked great in that first quarter, and Joey Aguilar looked like the Heisman winner in the first quarter. If he could have kept up how he was playing, I was texting you that if he can keep this up, and I said it's a big if, right? How he was playing in the first quarter, he might be the Heisman favorite come Monday. I mean, I think he completed his first 14 passes.
I think it was 12 to 12 or something like that.
For over 200 yards.
Crazy.
2 touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown on the first 3 drives. He kind of came back to earth a little bit, in the middle part of the game. And then you just saw Georgia, just for whatever reason, they just have that physical, nature about them. And suddenly, there were points in that game where I think there was the opening drive of the second half. Georgia didn't throw once. They just ran the ball, down their throat.
That was the difference in the second half. Georgia instilling their will, and then in overtime, just the power running game. Tennessee kicked a field goal. That's the only thing about getting the ball first and not scoring a touchdown. You put yourself in serious jeopardy. So,
well, and if you're going to knock off a team like Georgia, you have to strike when you have the chance. Tennessee had the chance. They had a game-winning opportunity for a field goal. They had a false start penalty that moved them 5 yards further back. The kid ends up missing the field goal. Maybe they were a little too conservative there late, with a college kicker in that situation. Sure. Hey, you had your opportunity. It was right there for the taking. I would have loved it because, remember, I got Tennessee to win the SEC, so that would have been a great win for me.
They're still not dead, though.
They're not dead.
Just one game. But it was a tough one. I mean, they've lost a lot to Georgia. Let's talk about another team you picked preseason to do some damage, and they are having a heck of a year. And their quarterback, I think, is a Heisman Trophy contender right now. Haynes King and Georgia Tech. I told you before the season started how afraid I was of Georgia Tech. They opened at Colorado. They won that game. But what they did to Clemson, what Haynes King did to Clemson, it was pretty impressive. What are your thoughts? I know you got to see some of that too.
Well, you talk about execution late, though. Oof. You talk about special teams and how important it is, right? And I mentioned Tennessee not executing, getting the false start penalty, which was a big deal, and then the kid missing the field goal. Contrast that with Georgia Tech, who executes perfectly down the stretch, where they had to run the field goal unit on with the clock running there at the end. Didn't look hurried, didn't look like they were out of sorts in any way. And then the kid nails the kick. I mean, that was 50 plus, right?
I think it was 55.
Wow. I mean,
he's
what
money.
A kick. And,
I think his name's Burr. He's money. Yeah, he was money at Colorado too in altitude. Brent Key. You're talking earlier about UCLA and head coach, right? A head coach can really be the personality of your team. Brent Key is the ultimate coach that way. His team is physical. His quarterback, Haynes King, every time he got up, it was like, he's slowly getting up. But then the next play, he's jamming down there again, jamming that ball down their throat. I was just so impressed. So. Your thoughts?
It's a great win for Georgia Tech. It's a great win for Georgia Tech, and we'll see if they can keep it up. Again, another sign that maybe there's a slight changing of the guard going on here in the ACC, right? With Clemson. Clemson's still good, but they haven't been great in a while.
So Georgia Tech and Miami do not play each other in the regular season. Our friend Kevin Mahan told me, but they probably will see each other maybe in the ACC championship. I want to get to one other game before just a couple NFLs. Texas A&M and Notre Dame. I know you didn't get to see a lot of that game, but that game was amazing. I just got to recap it really quick. Marcel Reed down the stretch, in a tough environment, South Bend with 70,000 screaming at at you to lead that team down to win that game. I just had to mention really quick Marcel Reed and Texas A&M. That's a huge win for Mike Elko on the road after last year losing to them at their place. So I mean, Texas A&M now is set up in the SEC. I was kind of kidding on our fantasy show about them being an 8-4 team every year. This might be the year they might break out of that 8-4. We'll see. It's still early, but let's get to the NFL really quick. We had the Chiefs Eagles yesterday. Any panic for the Chiefs now 0-2 and a little bit of trouble after losing that game?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's big time panic in Kansas City right now because sometimes it's not that you're losing, it's how you're losing, right? And, with Xavier Worthy being out, I mean, hopefully Xavier could come back. We're all rooting for the Fresno native to get back in there. That would be a big help, obviously, to get him back because they just don't feel like they have anybody that really scares the defense right now, right? I mean, Travis Kelce's getting a little bit old, right? Patrick Mahomes, still Patrick Mahomes, but, if he doesn't have those crazy weapons around him, they're a little more methodical, right? Now, I will say this. I mean, that defense still held the Eagles to like 216 total yards yesterday, right? I mean, the Eagles just kind of escaped with a win there. I mean,
agreed.
It was the tush
2 weeks
push
in a row,
and,
Scott. 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's a little bit of panic going on in Kansas City right now because when you're a victim of your own expectation, right? And so, I don't think they're panicking inside the locker room, but I think the fan base and everybody in the greater Kansas City area is thinking, whoa, what's happened here is our window may be closing a little bit, right?
Right. Looking really quick at our NFC East preview, I might have been a little premature on the New York Giants. I know they lost that game yesterday, but I mean, Russell Wilson down the stretch was amazing. I mean, like I said, it took an Aubrey miracle field goal kick again to get it done. But that NFC East is tough. There's all 4 of those teams are legit. Even with the Commanders losing at Green Bay too. So let's talk about as amazing as the Sunday Night Football game was 2 weeks ago. As terrible as it was last night, like I said, the Vikings, at home, their home opener, losing to the Falcons in a field goal kicking contest. Rough for J.J. McCarthy. Now I'm hearing he might be out with, he might have an injury, he might be out next week. So what are your thoughts on that game real quick?
Yeah, it was on. Every time I kept looking down at the score, it was like, what was it, 9-3 or something like that, and then 15-6. And, we'll see with J.J. McCarthy, right? Like, I would have said watching him in college that I wouldn't peg him to be, like an immediate star in the NFL. I think he could play in the NFL, but I wouldn't say, oh, there's a can't miss guy, right? Like going from college to the NFL. Got to give him some time. I mean, it's his second career start, so give him at least a half season to a full season before we make more of a judgment on him. But they're handing the keys to that team to him, right? And we'll see if it works out. I mean, you obviously got a couple great receivers there. I mean, you got Jefferson, obviously. You got Addison, who's suspended right now. When he comes back, that will certainly help. But, you also got receivers, not saying they're bad guys, but receivers want the football, right? And they're used to Sam Darnold throwing them to him last year and being very successful, right? So you hope that like everybody is willing to be a little patient with J.J. McCarthy and let him come along, but hard to do in the NFL, right? Because you only get one game a week. You got to sit with it for the entire week as well. We'll see. It's guys like J.J. McCarthy, guys like Caleb Williams, like we're talking about. I mean, we need to see it. We need to see it at some point. We saw it, got a glimpse of it in that first week with JJ leading him down on the winning drive, right? But he's still, it's just, I come back to it's his second game.
Right, and he missed all of last year, like you said.
Right. But when you saw JJ McCarthy in college, did you think, oh, wow, this guy's going to be a guy who's going to come right in, start in the NFL, and start winning right away?
I mean, I thought he performed better than he did last night, that's for sure. I mean, he looked good in the fourth quarter at Chicago, but he didn't look great in that game, period. So I think, like you said, adjustment time for him and all that. So we've got 2 exciting games tonight. With that being said, let's get into our money plays. All right, Scotty. Well, we got 2 exciting games tonight, and you've got one of them on your docket already. So let's see what you did last week really quick. He lost. The Kansas State game was very disappointing on Friday, obviously. Kansas State now off to, what, a 1-3 start, I believe it is.
Yeah, didn't see that coming.
Yeah, Oregon State, at Texas Tech, that was a tough one. I thought maybe the 24.5 might come back at the end in garbage, but it didn't. The Tennessee play comes through. And then here's the game, Texans, 2.5 points. He's had this one since last week, but you want to kind of talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I real quickly, I just like the Texans. It's a bounce back spot for the Texans. They don't want to go to 0-2. They're at home. It's a primetime game in front of the national audience. I think they'll be ready to play. And the Bucs a little fortunate last week to win, second straight week on the road.
Right.
I just think the Texans will bounce back. And basically, usually if you're laying 2.5, if you win the game, you'll cover. So that's my thinking there.
Okay. Here's what Scott's got today. His balance actually is 904, not 972. That's a typo. I'm sorry on that one. Didn't get a chance to fix it. But here's what he's got. But he's still over 900, and here's what he's got for tonight. Go for it.
All right, so I'm going with a couple of player props here. Took a look at both the NFL games, I'm already on the Texans, so I'm just going to stick with that bet. But Nico Collins also had a really quiet week one. I think he only had 3 catches on 5 targets, something like
25 yards, I think.
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think he'll be a big part of the game plan tonight because I think they'll make a point of trying to get him the football just based on what happened week one. Plus, the Bucs gave up nearly 300 yards passing to Michael Penix, in week one.
Right.
And if you go back, including the playoffs last year, until week one of this year, there were 7 straight games where Nico Collins went over this number.
Okay.
And so I think he's going to go over this number tonight. The only thing that I think could keep me away from it is if they jump out to a huge lead or something and then end up running the football. But I expect not a lot of points, but I expect some scoring in this game.
Sure.
And so I think it'll help Nico go over. My other play tonight, I wanted to find a way to bet, in some way give out a play on the Chargers-Raiders.
Right.
And I look at Ashton Genty, and I think his over-under for the game was like 70 rushing yards, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you know what? I think with the momentum of the crowd, they're going to try to show off their new first-round
Their
pick.
number one
right,
pick,
right?
yep. Mm-hmm.
Monday night in Las Vegas.
Okay.
There's going to be a lot of pizzazz
Sure.
around this game tonight.
Sure.
They're going to want to get Ashton Genty involved early. Plus, if you do it in the first quarter there, we only has to be over 15.5 rushing yards in that first quarter. You take out the prospect of the Raiders falling behind big and not running the ball in the second half,
True.
right? So I decided to kind of trim it down to a first quarter bet on Ashton Genty over 15.5 rushing yards.
I like it. Yeah, hopefully the Raiders get the ball first, and maybe you get two possessions as well. So, all right, here's what I did last week. So you live by the parlay, you die by the parlay, as we learn in sports. So 0 for 7. I mean, honestly, a couple of them came down to the last ones, especially numbers 6 and 7. Like I said, the Vikings last night was my last hope to win something, and of course that didn't happen. So live by the parlay, die by it. So I went with a few more single games this time. I do have a couple parlays in there, but I want to feature. I joined Scott, so it's a money agreement on. I've got number 2 Texans. I bought it down minus 2.5. So I bought it down on that game a little bit, and then the Chargers, I bought that one down to 2.5 as well. So again, I think
and you
both
mean
teams.
Chargers versus Raiders right there.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So like I said,
okay.
I was typing up quickly. So I wagered on all 4 WNBA games that are going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday. So in terms of on this fictitious contest where we start with $1,000, Fever at home need to win. It's an elimination game. So against the Atlanta Dream, the Aces just look completely dominant right now. They've won 12 in a row. They go up to Seattle. So take the Aces and give the 5.5. The Liberty, kind of on that one, I'm not sure if Breanna Stewart's going to play. She had a knee injury, so that could affect that one. But the Liberty going home up 1-0 with a chance to clinch it against the Phoenix Mercury. Still like.
What would that line be if Stewart was healthy? You think would it be?
Boy, if Stewart's healthy, it's probably 4.5 to 5 maybe. So, and then on Lynx Valkyries, the Valkyries, congratulations, their first season in San Francisco. They get a home game against Minnesota, the number 1 team. I'm going to say they're going to go over the 151 combined. I still think the Lynx win that game, but it's 10.5. That's a lot of points.
That game is at Golden State.
Yeah, it's in San Francisco.
Did they play 3-game series?
They're 3 games, so it goes 1-1-1. They changed it this year. So.
I mean, that could be a spot where I might consider a play on the Valkyries there because they got blown out in game 1.
Yeah, 10.5.
Right? Back at home. Maybe even a first half bet on Golden State there based on what happened in game 1. Kind of embarrassed.
Right.
Come out with a lot of energy in game 2.
All right. Well, like I said, that's all the time we've got. So thanks for joining us. On behalf of my man Scott, I'm Dean. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll have all your plays for the weekend in college and pro football. This has been episode 50 of the Beem and Dean Show.